Well, let's start with picking the right shows. I think one of the things we have to remember, the show matters. Like if you're just getting started, it might make sense to get on some less niched shows to get some momentum building, kind of get your feet wet, like start to get comfortable with getting your message out. But once you start flipping from I got all the time in the world, I'll take any show, to I got zero time, like these got to count. You want to hone it in. And so here's my little trick. I first look at my competitors. Who are my competitors? Who is serving my ideal audience? And they already have a podcast. Second part, what's the problem that I am uniquely qualified to solve?
Boom, 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 boom.
What's up, everybody? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow Chart podcast with your boys, Matt Wolf and Joe Fier. Check it. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Hustle and Flow Chart podcast. I kicked Joe out to make this intro today. Who needs him anyway? No, I'm just kidding. He's in the main interview. I'm just doing this intro. Today we're talking to Melanie Benson. Now, her resume is quite impressive. She's guested on over 500 podcasts, interviewed over 1,000 experts on her own show called Amplify Your Success. She's the author of Rewired for Wealth, the co-author of the bestseller Voices of the 21st Century. She writes for Entrepreneur.com, American Express Open Forum, Bloomberg Business Week, Women's Day, Parenting Magazine, University of Phoenix, and she's just got a ton of accolades to her name. So we were really excited to talk to her on this episode today. What we did on this episode was deep dive into podcast guesting and going on virtual summits. In this episode, we literally walk you through how to pick what shows to be on, how to actually reach out and get on those shows. Once you're on, what do you say? How do you actually get people impressed with you who are listening to the show? And then how do you actually capture the listeners into leads on your own list? And then what happens after that? Once somebody's on your list, we dive into that a little bit. The core of this episode is really everything you need to know about podcast guesting and virtual summits and how to really leverage those to the max and get the most out of them. And you're going to want the notes on these. So to get the notes, you can go to flowchartgroup.com. You can request to join our Facebook group. And anybody who joins our Facebook group, we're hooking you up with the notes for the latest episodes. So go check that out. And finally, this episode is sponsored by our favorite SEO tool over at Ahrefs. That's Ahrefs.com. Now, one of the things we've been doing a lot of lately is we've been trying to optimize our YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel now where we're posting video clips from a lot of these podcasts, and we're trying to optimize our SEO over on YouTube. A lot of people don't realize this, but Ahrefs isn't just an SEO tool for Google, but Ahrefs is also an SEO tool for places like YouTube, Amazon, Bing, all sorts of other search engines. But lately, we've been doing a lot of optimization around trying to build our YouTube channel so we can actually find keywords, find competitors' keywords, and all sorts of deep dive info into how to actually optimize a YouTube channel. Now, we use it for SEO and all of our blog posts and things like that. But lately, we've actually found ourselves using it to really dial in our YouTube account. And that's something that you can be doing as well for just $7. Ahrefs has a $7 7-day trial. You can go get in there, test it out, optimize your YouTube channel, optimize your blog post, optimize anything that you're doing that you need more traffic to. Ahrefs has got you covered. It's the best SEO tool out there. If you listen back to any of our episodes where we talk about SEO with any of our SEO guests, Ahrefs is a tool that is mentioned on every single one of those episodes. Anybody who's serious about generating free, high-quality, targeted traffic using SEO is using Ahrefs. So if you want to be serious about it too, make sure you're using Ahrefs. You can go get it $7, 7 days, Ahrefs.com. All right, let's go jump in with Melanie Benson.
Hello, Melanie. How you doing?
Hello.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Yeah. We were reconnecting on all the different ways that we hung out together over the years, the last 10 plus years, maybe. I don't know. We don't have a perfect date.
More, yeah.
We sort of realized that we go back about 10 years, which was kind of crazy to go back to some of the previous events that we met at. We were talking about how somewhere around 2010, 2011, we met at a James Malinchak event, and then again at Action Seminar, which I think was probably around 2011, 2012, somewhere in there.
Something like that. And we got to give shout outs. Yeah. Henry Evans. I always like to give shout outs to our buddies.
Henry!
I know he listens
the awesome connector.
He is. Yeah, I just chatted with him yesterday. So yeah, Henry, Bradley Will was there at the Action Seminar. So all of our buddies.
Yep. And then fun. Steve Olsher, again, let's see, when was the first New Media Summit that we were all at together? That was, were you at the one in Austin?
I missed the Austin one, but I think we all caught up in the one in San Diego a year ago.
Yeah, September. That's right. That's crazy. It's been a year.
Gotta love our podcasting group.
I know, it's so fun. And and that was ironically around, podcast guesting and stuff. We're all icons at that event. So yeah, we got the little mastermind. So I think that's where we like dug deeper into things. And I think that's where we're really going to take this conversation too, is all around podcast. It's like expert guesting. I like that term. I've never thought about that actually. Yeah. But it's everything. You can apply it everywhere.
Yeah. Well, you think about, most of us have recognized the value of speaking, but if you're going to do it virtually, like there's a lot of different platforms. So it's not just podcasts. It's not just virtual events. It's not just like Facebook Lives. There's a whole bunch of different ways. So I was trying to find a term that kind of caught it all. And I saw guest experting. We gotta find a better term. Still not the best term.
It's getting there,
but it's very clear on what you're talking about when you say it. There's no sort of ambiguity around it. So, well, let's get a bit of your history. I just learned now in our sort of pre-interview that you were doing stuff with StomperNet before you kind of branched out on your own. Let's go back. How did you get into the entrepreneurial world? Like, what's the story there?
Yeah, well, so this is my 20th year in business. A little crazy.
Nice.
As a matter of fact, in September, it was 20 years. And I came out of corporate and I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew I wanted to have freedom and independence. And so I started a coaching business because I had been trained and certified as a coach. And I thought, oh yeah, that'll be perfect. Well, I gave my notice 2 weeks before 9/11. So all of that went out the window.
Wow.
And had to really kind of scrap around and figure out how do you make money as a coach, as a service provider. And that was kind of the beginning of an arc of learning about all of the online side of things. And what happened for me is I tapped into a mastermind really early on with some very powerful marketers. And we all know the value of masterminds. We were just talking about that, and we all connected there. Mm-hmm. And my whole reality went from you sell your time to you sell results, and you leverage the online space because it was really emerging at that point. And I got very well known for teaching people how to create scalable results, really leverage their time and energy without all the overwhelm. And so I got put on a lot of stages, and that's how the StomperNet faculty evolved. I was one of the big name coach speakers on a lot of the popular marketers stages. And literally, it's like I just took off because I was one of the only female coaches at that time who was able to, have greater than 6 figures in her business and was teaching something that solved a problem that other people were creating. And that's a key idea
deeper
there.
On that.
Yeah, we're this is going to thread through everything we talk about today, because to me, in the beginning, I had no idea how to talk about anything. I had no clear message. I had no clear concept of what I did. I was like, I'm a coach. Don't you need a coach? And that didn't work so well. And people just looked at me and went like, I don't need a coach. Like, why should I do this? And when I realized that one of my superpowers was to help people solve the overwhelm that was paralyzing them from being able to achieve results, and like this major shift occurred. And all of a sudden, when I said, I can help you stop feeling overwhelmed and 10x your results, people were like, I'm in. Where do I sign up? Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the marketers, as we know back then, because I know you guys were emerging at that time, they were teaching people all these things with all these ideas. And there was a million things. People would walk away with notebooks with like 17 pages from an event. And they're like, I don't know where to start. So I became their secret weapon. And that's really where a lot of that originally kind of all took off.
Interesting. Yeah, because I remember even the James Malinchek event, I think there was like a big notebook you get and all this stuff. And it's like
the thud factor.
If you're watching the video, you can see down on my bottom shelf, there's a whole bunch of binders down there from various conferences.
One of those,
yeah.
You still have it. You love that stuff.
Actually, one of those is John Carlton's thing. I think this one here.
You'll probably see my little section in there. Nice. I think at that time I was teaching how to leverage your time and energy by hiring the right virtual assistants, because that was really getting popular at that time.
Interesting.
Nice.
So and so in StomperNet, that was in the digital marketing, online marketing space, and this is interesting. So what was like the big thing? I mean, obviously it's the overwhelm to results. Does that carry over now into guest experting and all the other stuff you're up to?
Well, I think overwhelm is kind of a persistent state for most of our entrepreneurial community, right? It's
now
like
more than ever, maybe?
No shortage of ideas. There's no shortage of things to learn and to navigate. It's like if you don't have the right team and you're doing a lot of things yourself, or you don't know how to say no and you don't know how to prioritize, you're always going to feel overwhelmed. And I think as it ties into podcast guesting, and this is a little bit of a kind of a side detour, but it's really about like, can you afford to say yes to everything? No. And like we're in this space right now where I have a really popular topic and I've been getting just like requests out just like crazy. And I'm super honored, high class problem. And we can't say yes to it all. So we have to learn how to really define what is an ideal audience for me to be in front of as a guest expert, as a speaker, as a affiliate marketer, whatever that is. And what do we say no to? Because even though it's a great option, it's not the right option for me. It's not where my ideal clients are going to be. And can I tell a quick story about this? Because I learned a really expensive lesson. This will also be a great throwback. You guys will love this. Probably 15 years ago, I got invited to that coveted stage. Do you remember back when they were doing the cage matches?
Like UFC type?
No,
what do you mean?
Digital cage matches where they were bringing popular marketers onto these teleseminars. We didn't even have Zoom yet. And Alex Mendozian was one of the big ones. And I'm trying to remember the guy who was the NLP copywriter. He's kind of faded away. But anyway, there was this big thing. And so I got asked to go against Alex Mendozian. You guys know who Alex is, right? Uh-huh. And so the idea was whoever gives the best answers, people vote for. And you have to, like, whoever wins an opportunity to have their email broadcast go out to their big list. Well, I'm in heaven. I'm like, this is cool. Like, 200,000 people on this list. Like, I want to win. And so I did. I won. I was like, little old me. And I thought, wow, this is perfect. I get the email broadcast. I get 250 people to sign up for whatever my offer was. And as soon as the offer expired, because it was like a trial, 235 of those people bailed.
Oh,
so what do you think I learned? Right idea, leverage more time, get in front of a big audience, wrong audience. Because if you're not in your sweet spot audience, if you're not talking to the people who really crave what it is that you do and want to work with someone like you, it doesn't matter what the visibility is. They're not going to take action. They're not going to say yes, and they're certainly not going to stay around. And it ends up being a profit leak in your business. So big, costly lesson, but it really stuck with me after that. Target the right audiences. Be with people who are your people.
Yeah, and that's such a good story because it's easy to get caught up in the hype and the excitement of like this. Here's a special event that's happening. Oh, here's a big marketer, and you could get seen by so many people, and you hear that all the time. I mean, yeah, and we get wooed into that sometimes. Going even like I know we'll talk about virtual summits and going on podcasts and stuff, and it's very easy to just say yes to everything and then fill your calendar, and then you're like, crap.
Well, we've done stuff even with our podcast, right? Where we'll go and like pay a company to promote our podcast on their platform. We'll see a giant spike in the download numbers for like 1 month, and the next month they're just kind of back to what they were, right? And it's kind of the same thing where like we're trying to put our podcast in front of their audience. They may go give it a listen, but if it's the wrong audience, they just fade away.
Yeah, they're not going to. I call it like following a golden thread. There's an energy that builds up with the right audience where they want more and more and more. And if they're not the right audience, they're like, next.
So what's the golden thread? Got me curious now. Go deeper, please.
So, tell me about gold. Well, little backstory is I was right about the time we saw each other last. I started making a new decision about my life and what I wanted for my life. And I had been on the road for probably close to 25 years by then, between corporate and my entrepreneurial speaking. And I was starting to realize like I wanted a different quality of life. So I started making the decision that I was going to pull back on traveling and speaking and do more virtual stuff because those platforms were starting to emerge. And so podcasting obviously became one of the ideal platforms about 8 years ago. At that same time, I also realized that translating from live stage where I can see you, I can connect with you when I get off the stage is very different than what happens on a podcast. Because most of the time they can't see you. All they can do is hear you. And the idea of what my topic was and what I would talk about, and then whatever invitation I would make had to really be intentional. Because first of all, on a podcast, you're not going to listen if the topic doesn't pull you in. Unless you're like a avid fan of the show and you're like, I'll just binge listen to everything these guys put out, which I know everybody does with your show.
Yeah,
Let's face it, you guys have a rocking show.
Thank you.
And I know they do with Amplify Your Success.
Of course
so
they do.
let's just get
Your
clear
show.
on that.
There are only 2 shows that they do that for, though.
All the other shows, right? But the topic really does make a difference. And I'll find myself scrolling, going, that doesn't pull me in. That doesn't pull me in. We're listening for relevance. And that's the first step in the golden thread. Is that topic relevant enough to pull me in? And then it goes into talking points. Like, are we building up some momentum and moving people from being just interested to being intrigued enough and invested enough to take an action? And then that action is the key. So I've probably interviewed over 500 people by now between all the different podcasts and shows that I've done over the years. And what I realize is a lot of people don't really know what their action should be. They don't have an action. They don't have something that makes sense. They're like, oh, just go to my website. I'm like, I wonder how well that's going to work.
That's true.
And I started hearing clients coming in and actually guests of my show that are really big names. And they're like, this podcast guesting thing is working for you? I'm like, yeah, it works for me. Like, what are you doing that I'm not doing? Like, I think it's a waste of time. And I would start digging into their topic and I'd be like, ugh. Topic's kind of boring. Like, it's really vanilla. Their talking points are okay. Like it's getting built up there, but the action doesn't make sense. There's not a clear action, or there's not a defined action that we're actually pulling in our ideal client. We're just making it so broad that we're not really kind of like creating a prospect pool that's relevant to us. So that's the idea behind the golden thread.
So with the action, that's like a call to action during the episode, right?
Or an invitation or a next step, whatever you want to call it. And some people, there's probably like 10 different ones that make sense depending on the kind of business you run and what it is you want to get out of podcasting. And I know some people are like, I just like talking.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah,
that's true.
Cool.
You could do that to anyone on the phone, but like, let's make it count on a podcast to the people you should be chatting with.
Because you are making an investment, you're investing your time, and sometimes there's an investment of money behind it. And, some of the bigger name shows, you got to put some skin in the game to even get on the show now.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like there's like sort of 4 segments that I almost want to break this conversation down into, but you probably have more of a framework that you already have. But here's kind of what I was thinking is like, how do you pick what shows that you go on? Once you've picked the shows you want to go on, how do you actually get their attention so you can get on the shows? When you're on the show, how do you sort of angle your message, and how do you talk to them so that people want to hear more from you? And then finally, how do you get people to take action as a result of you being on that show? Is there any other like sort of pieces that we
Let's just do
cover?
a mini workshop.
Okay.
Let's turn this into a half-day workshop. We've got this.
No pressure.
Well, let's start with picking the right shows, because I think we've defined that's so huge. And okay, so I think one of the things we have to remember, whether we're a business owner, a business leader, entrepreneur, service professional, I like to call them expertpreneurs, people building a business around their expertise. The show matters. Now, in the beginning, let me give a caveat. Like, if you're just getting started, it might make sense to get on some less niched shows to get some momentum building, kind of get your feet wet, like start to get comfortable with getting your message out. But once you start flipping from, I got all the time in the world, I'll take any show, to I got 0 time, like these got to count. You want to hone it in. And so here's my little trick. I first look at my competitors. Who are my competitors? Or we might say our collaborative partners.
You can just say competitors. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, ranges both, right?
True,
but it's like, who is serving my ideal audience? And they already have a podcast. Second part, and this ties into what I led with in the beginning. What's the problem I am uniquely solving that they don't do, or they don't make their focus point? And it goes back to many of my competitors are solving or creating a problem that I am uniquely qualified to solve.
Ooh.
Okay. So if you can't find that angle, then look for something that complements what they do. You could actually have the same core delivery, but maybe you have one little specialty piece that they don't do. But you're solving. So really the core is like, who's my audience? And that means you really need to understand who your core audience is. And I don't know if you guys have picked up on this, but a lot of people, they don't really know who their audience is.
Most
they don't know
people
who their ideal client is, right? And you go into start, like I'm really big on helping people develop a magnetic message to deliver in those times. And what I found is they don't know who their ideal audience is. So they're talking to everybody and nobody's listening.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we honestly are very guilty of that for a while. We literally just recently did a whole full avatar, like what's our perfect avatar, and reworked a lot of our messaging. I think we kind of mentioned that at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
But you're right. Most people don't think, like, who is that? Where are they at? Who are they reading? Who are they listening to? How can you show up right there?
Yeah. And I like to think of it, there's probably more than we have time for, but there's a little formula that I designed to help people really uncover who that person is. But even if you know who that person is, you're still going to find that there's times to refine it. Mm-hmm. So if you're on someone's podcast who maybe attracts all women, but your core audience is women who are building a business around their expertise, you want to like have the courage to lean into that and say, great idea, but probably, unless I've got some bandwidth and I just want to test it out and see what happens, I'm just going to keep passing on the people that are talking to everyone so I can focus on the people that I really want to be in front of.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you're deciding which podcast to be on, where are you going to look for them? How are you discovering them? Is it you just browsing iTunes, or is there some sort of resource that you use to pick out podcasts to be on?
Okay, well, I don't have a super scientific method. I'm really in a very high class problem situation where I have an abundance of podcasters around me,
right, sure.
and podcasters are coming to me more than I'm going to them at this point.
Knowing Steve Olsher will do that to you.
Yes, there is a benefit to being an icon in Steve Olsher's lineup. Mm-hmm. If I want to really start niching down, which we have been, what I might do is look at who the shows my best competitors have been featured on lately.
Yeah.
So you can kind of do a little spying on them on social media, or go look on their media page and see where they've been featured lately. We can do Google searches. And actually, I don't remember what the name of this tool is, but I just got, I'm in a mastermind that I was like, oh my gosh, like this guy just gave all this cool SEO tools to, it actually will go and look up what the shows are that fit your niche. So I'll circle back and give you guys the name of it. I have to go look it up. I don't remember what it is. It's so hot. I was like, I haven't tried it yet. So full disclosure, I don't know if it works, but he was talking about it and I'm like, I'm totally doing that.
That sounds cool.
One of the tips I know, like where we do some research and maybe it helps you, it's similar to Google searching, but listennotes.com. Plugging
I think
in.
that was it actually. Yeah.
Is that? There you go.
I think we use it.
We use it for research for our own guests, like coming on the show, but definitely for podcast guesting, it's the best way.
Totally.
Nice.
So that's my core plan. And also I keep a database. So like if I'm working with a client and I know there's certain shows that I love. And so I keep a database of, all right, so client, I want you to go pitch yourself to these 10 shows. Cause I think in the beginning, a lot of people are like, I don't even know where to start. So just even having a kind of a something to get going on helps you kind of get in that momentum.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, so you said kind of start with a less niched show, right? So would that be to kind of like get their chops going, kind of get the flow of their messaging?
You're going to screw up on a show nobody's listening to.
Well,
yeah.
or even it's
that
more
was what
broad.
I was going to say is like pick the lesser known shows to start. And I actually tell my clients that I'm like, don't go for the big shows out of the gate. No. Like, let me listen to your episode and give you some critique before you go for the big show. I actually had a client who she bought a segment on John Lee Dumas's show, and I went, and she told me her topic, and I'm like, oh man, can we work on that before you go? Like,
yeah, you're gonna have to fork over some coin to get on his show.
Yeah, I mean, with his show though, I have heard that if you get on it and you are the right audience, he will send you some traffic. He will drive. It's worth it if you have the right audience.
I still get leads from my episode I did with him 7 years ago.
Yeah. Wow.
That
That's
show
amazing.
has brought me something close to 45,000 in revenue that I can track. Like I don't
Wow.
even know where half it came from. It is a great show. And you get on a good show. And I think that's what's possible, especially if you know how to work the episode once it airs.
Yeah. Well, let's get there in a second. But
Yeah.
before we do, like, how are you doing the outreach? How, like, you know, how are you pitching to be on the show? Because I know that's, you know, it's sort of easy to go and go, okay, I think I'd be a good fit for this show and this show and this show.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother deal to actually get on their radar and get them to reply to you.
Mhm.
Now, what I'm about to tell you is very much podcaster specific. So I'd be very curious to hear what you guys think about this. I am one of those podcasters that's getting pitched all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets, I mean, I'm grateful and it gets a little overwhelming and sometimes annoying because I actually have a whole process on my website of how to pitch me to get on my show.
That's
Like,
smart.
you're like, obviously not listening to the show because
Right.
you would know how to do this. I think the first thing we can do that, especially if you're just kind of getting warmed up in a new niche, you don't have a lot of connections yet, is start to like go look for the show and share the show on your social media and tag the host. Leave a review. You may not realize this, but most of us avidly read every review that comes in.
Yep.
Now I read them because I actually pull certain reviews and I spotlight them in social media and I give a little love back to whoever leaves the review.
Smart.
But it's like I'm paying attention to, have you been listening? Are you, you know, like do something to build a relationship and give first to the host, especially if they're getting nonstop pitched. The other thing is to go and look on their show site and see if they have a posted process. So I know a lot of podcast booking services, they're great because they say view time as the expert, but if they're not recognizing the process, they're probably not going to do you a favor on getting you booked because we're just going delete, 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 right? Now, I think once you've done a little bit of nurturing, and I've had some people do this to me, and it actually does get on my radar, is you could say, you know, I've been listening to the show and I saw you talk about A, B, and C, and it made me think I have this topic that I've been getting booked on. I think it would be really perfect. Would you be open to hearing more about it to see if it's a fit for your show? And guess what? I did this with you guys, right?
Yeah.
It's like I saw you make a couple, hey, who's doing this? Who's doing that? And I'm like, I got a topic. You want to talk about it? Like, I'm up. And eventually you guys like, boom, right time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. Like I had somebody pitch me to talk about doing guest article posting for search engine optimization. And I was like, I just had somebody talking about something similar. It's not the right time. She circled back about 4 months later. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that next piece is that consistency and to not give up just because somebody doesn't respond the first time. Don't be afraid to nudge them again and say, just want to check back in, you know, think it might be relevant now, or, hey, I have this new topic that might be a better fit. And then I think the last piece is once you've done a little bit of social media nurturing is you can do an email pitch, but tailor it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't like send the same flipping letter every single time. And I actually have one guy and I almost booked it, but the topic wasn't right. And I am very protective about my topics. Like I'm not going to have to say anything on my show.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy, he's really clever. He's a podcast booker, but he grabbed these little funny video GIFs and he put it in. He goes, you know, it was like, please, 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 like a really cute puppy dog face. And I'm like, all right, like, let's look at what you got here. And it's like, think of this as a person and not like this conquest that you've got to get on. Like, how do I really connect with this person and make this something valuable that they can't say no to? That's really, and again, that's where the messaging comes in. Because if your topic title doesn't really land, and telling me you're doing a book tour, okay,
that is not a selling point for a podcast
no,
at all.
It's not. How is this relevant to my audience? And I think this is where we have the opportunity to really stand out in the crowd, is think about what's the topic and the takeaways that audience can't afford not to have access to. That's when you're going to grab the host's attention.
I like that perspective a lot. I can speak from our experience that I actually don't mind persistence. If somebody emails me a bunch of times and tries to hit me on LinkedIn and Facebook, I don't mind that. That's cool. What really, really bothers me is when I can tell it was a canned email that you sent to 400 people and you have no idea what our show is about and who we are. That's an instant delete in my book. It's just like, we'll open it and I'll go, okay, there's no customization. They're not referencing our show. They're not suggesting ideas that would be a fit for our audience.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to reply to it. They're instant delete for that email. And we told our VA the same thing. She knows that if an email comes in that's a pitch and you can tell it's just a cold pitch with no additional context around our show, just get rid of it. We're not interested.
They name our company name instead of our podcast name.
Yeah.
They're like, that's a common one. I'm like, come on. Like, you're obviously using a scraping device. There's so many tools out there that make follow-up even easy. And it's pretty easy to spot. Usually they go in the same frequency. It's like the same kind of modified email. And you're like, okay, come on. There's like no effort.
Yeah, they found a template inside of Mailshake and everybody's just using the same thing.
Exactly.
But
and one last little piece on this. Don't just send a LinkedIn email saying, hey, I see you have a podcast. I'd love to talk to you about getting on your show. Come on. Like, tell me where's the value? It's like, unless I know you, like, just be forward with the value, like what's the outcome. And I think it'll give you much better results.
Yeah.
I love it.
And one thing we've actually been seeing quite a bit more lately, which does get our attention more than just a cold email, is people actually sending us personalized videos. We actually got one on LinkedIn just the day or two ago from somebody that we don't really know, but he's a listener of the show. And he made this video of, he knew we were a San Diego Padres fans and stuff like that. He's up in LA. He's a Dodger fan or
he was wearing
whatever.
a Dodger jersey. I'm like, this is actually pushing us away. Well, you're in LA. I don't know.
But so he sent us this video and was sort of leaning into, talking about baseball and things that he knew about us personally. And like a small piece of it was him saying, hey, I'd love to be on your show. I think I can talk about this, and this to your audience. Yep. But most of the video was him talking about us and an interest that we all share. And
I pulled us in like minutes in, and then finally there was an ask at the end.
Yeah.
And it was really cool.
And I mean, he's somebody that Joe and I both watched that video and we're like, should we book him? He actually seems like a decent fit, which if he did it in any other way, he probably would have never got on our radar.
A little trick like I'll do to, not to get on podcasts, but just for other things, like to actually get people on our show that we have no connection, is like a little Loom video, a little personalized video. I did this yesterday. And it's either on camera. I do a little research on their social media. Oh, he just had a baby. Cool. Gonna mention that. It's like little nuggets like that will just catch attention enough where at least they're peeking in a little deeper in who you are. I think that's what's so powerful. What you're saying.
It's like we're people. Connect with us. And don't do the date and ditch thing either. Don't date us and then disappear when it's time to share the episode, or like, like, oh, where did that person go that's been so connected for a long time? So
that's okay. So that's good. So pitching, is there anything else on that? Because I think those are amazing.
I could do a whole class on that. I know. We got other big fish to fry. So.
Yeah. Let's do it. At the end of the day, I'd say the overall synopsis of pitching is personalize it. Know who you're talking to. That's like, whether you do it in video or email or whatever, just don't send canned automated messages that you send everybody. That's just, you're not going to get any attention that way.
By the way, I did all this wrong in the beginning. I didn't know any better. Luckily, I had some people went, oh, this is cool. And they're like, put me on their show. But I did it all wrong in the beginning too. So if you've been doing it the wrong way, just pivot and start using some of these techniques.
Yeah. So once you get a yes, so what would the next step be in your eyes for that person?
I think this is where a lot of people get paralyzed or bottlenecked, depending on how well they know their message. This is where you want to really be thoughtful about the topic. What is the topic? So I do a lot of stuff on podcast guesting. I have several topics I get booked on, but this is a popular one right now. But what I try to do is kind of make it a little unique to the show we're getting on. I think about what is the outcome or what's the niche that they're in? What is the kind of common theme of this podcast? And how can I just maybe tweak the language a little bit so that it really meets the theme of the show? So a lot of people, when they pitch me, they're going to put amplify in the language they're using on the show. And really think about submitting materials that are really valuable. What I find, and not everybody's the same. Some people don't care about talking points, but give me a little bit to work with here. Give me give me some ideas of what you might want to talk about as a running start. Don't just give me some, I had someone not too long ago give me 3 very generic sentences. I was like, where are we going with this? Like, this is not going to help anybody be curious. So I say, don't make the host work too hard unless the host wants to work that hard to really make a custom, unique show, which is great. But a lot of times, like, give them enough to work with so they can showcase you very well.
Yeah. And you did that amazing for us. I mean, we always do research, but yeah, like, what would you call that? Is that
it's like a one sheet.
It's kind of like a one sheet. Okay.
It's kind of like a one sheet. It's like I call it like a speaker kit.
Okay.
It's like, this is this kind of stuff you might need. Pick and choose what works for you. I know you're going to want to make it your own, but this is a running start to make their job easier.
Oh, I love it. I wish more people did that, because you have like suggested questions on here. And I mean, we may not ask the question specifically. We may not get to all of them, but it definitely gives us sort of a roadmap of, okay, we know what she's trying to achieve on this show, so we kind of know how to direct things.
Here's why this is so important. And this is such a great point about what this part of the golden thread. If my host doesn't know me really well, then chances are they're going to ask me questions that don't help me showcase my message well. And then I can't build that golden thread. I can't inspire someone to want more from me if the host isn't asking great questions. And I've actually had people ask the questions that I'm like, where are we going with this? Like, this, I don't understand. Like, this isn't even like relevant. And so I try to honor whatever the host wants to create for their show. But look, if I'm investing my time, I still want to make sure I'm going to be able to generate a result. And so giving people a starting point will help them shape the flow of the conversation so you can create that momentum necessary to get people to want more from you.
I love that. It's like it's such a, like, hey, I'm going to help you, podcaster, but really it's helping you. It's helping the audience connect with you in the best way for you in that thing that you're going to offer for free or whatever it is, the invitation at the end. I mean, it's so perfect, because there's a lot of podcasts where you get on the podcast and there's no pre-talk. There's no, hey, what is the biggest takeaway that you want to leave my audience with? And like, we try to do that every pre-talk before we have a podcast, but it's always surprising. Like, I don't know, just flip on the mic and see where it goes. It's like, that hurts. Like, I don't want to just talk to talk. Come on.
Well, also, think about the experience of the listener.
Right.
So are you building a conversation that the listeners are like, I'm hanging on every word. I need to know what's going to happen next. Or are they like, this sounds like every other conversation you've had?
Yeah.
So having some intentionality and really feeding your host some things that might help them create that intentional flow of questions, I think it does everybody. It makes it better for everybody. Let's put it that way.
It does. Perfect.
And there's a common question that people ask all the time. It's like, and I see this in a lot of the podcasting forums I'm in. People are like, so how do you actually know if the podcast is generating leads for you? So there's one, and you guys have probably covered this before, but one really simple thing you can do is have a pretty link.
Yeah.
Send wherever you want, but I create a pretty link for every single episode I'm featured on. So my team tracks to see how much traffic is really coming from these different shows. And that way, like, okay, I want more of these kind of shows because this is working. We're going to do less of these kind of shows or virtual summits or whatever. Like, some virtual summits I've been on, I'm like, did anybody actually get on and watch that summit?
Like, know that feeling.
Little traffic.
Happens a lot.
Just because there's a lot of great people on it doesn't mean anybody knows how to market and enroll. So it's really great to have that tracking just for your own knowledge. So you want to do more of what's working and less of what's not. And that helps you make those kind of grown-up decisions about where we can put our time and marketing focus.
Yeah, I think we're always kind of blown away by how few people actually do that. How many people just kind of give their generic URL to their website and they have no idea the effectiveness of going on podcasts.
Or they just say, just get me on social.
Yeah,
like,
just follow me on Facebook. That's fine. Follow me on Twitter. Like, really? Okay.
Wait, so Melanie, what's an example of a pretty link that you might have made for this show?
MelanieBenson.com/hustle.
Nice.
I just had to, So go check that out.
Might as well slide that in.
A little earlier than we normally ask.
Here's something I want to get. Oh, go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was just going to say, create a name that ties back to the show. It's much easier for the listeners to remember it too.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I wanted to ask next was, what if your topic, the thing that the niche that you're in, the thing that you teach is not really that exciting of a topic? Like, how do you make it sexier for the podcasts?
Oh, I was going to be a smart ass and say you don't. This is where I specialize. So I guess I need to.
Come on, you're the expert, Melanie.
Or something. And you know what's interesting? This is actually a fun topic because there are a lot of people whose core work sounds like everybody else. I mean, look, I'm a business coach. There's a bazillion business coaches, right? Like, how do you spice it up and make it unique? So one of the things that I like to do, and by the way, this is a mistake that people make, is just putting out these vanilla generic topics that don't stand out. One of the things that I think you can do super easy is actually two things. One is think of a formula that kind of like connects back to your work, don't do the SMART goal formula. You know, like everybody and their brother does SMART goal formula, or their sister, do something that's really branded to you. So when I started teaching this work last year, realized that people don't know how to craft magnetic messaging. So I created a formula called the ROCKS method.
Okay.
Relevant, outcome driven, specific, credibility boosting. Okay. So now when I'm teaching, I can say, look, if your message isn't converting, if you're getting on these podcasts and you don't have people saying yes, then chances are something's broken in your ROCKS formula. You're either not relevant, you're not having a title and talking points and outcomes or outcome driven content. You're not able to be specific enough. So one of the little cheat things you can do is find a way to put a little specificity in it. Can you do it in 90 days? Is it a 5-day system? Is there a 4-part formula, right? So find some way to like bring a little specificity in, and then it shines a little more. It has a little more sparkle to it. And then credibility. Oops, I did that wrong. Credibility, then specificity. I can spell. I really can. Credibility this is a piece that a lot of people miss because they get a little humble in their delivery and they're like, oh, I don't want to like make it seem like I'm more than I'm not, or people get trapped in imposter syndrome. Well, if you can bring a little bit of credibility into your intro, into talking about case studies or client successes when you're talking, or maybe even in the title of you and what you do, then what happens is, think about like this. You're one of 1 million people or 100 people or however many people that do something similar. And I'm listening to a show and I listen to all these guests. The credibility is where you stand out. And someone goes, that's nice too. Okay, I think I better pay attention because this person knows what they're doing. So I'd be curious as listeners, like as you're listening in, did you catch where I dropped credibility all the way through, but keeping it really natural? So what you don't want to do is be that name dropper that, you know, like everybody's like, shower, I need a shower too, you know, it's like, it's not about the hype. It's about really creating clarity that you can generate results, that you know what you're doing, and doing it in a way that the listener goes, yeah, okay, I need to know more.
Yeah. No, it's just really cool stories. And you can weave those into any education, you can relate that to anything you're teaching on the podcast. Just a cool story that you did with a client happens to be maybe a big name, or maybe there was a big result that you came up with. And I can imagine on that one sheet to the podcaster, this helps them name the episode as well. Where,
it does.
like, because I know as podcasters, that's one of the biggest things I know you stress about the most, but we like collaboratively, like that's copywriting. You need something catchy there. You don't want some broad
and SEO
thing.
Friendly. Like you have to think about, like, is there some kind of an SEO, like a word that your audience connects to, or the search engines are going to connect to, that helps.
Yeah. I love it.
And not all the hosts are really good at naming shows. So
most are horrible.
Yeah. It's one of the funny thing is with our show, the thing that I always use the word agonize around, but I mean, I'm not really in agony. It's that's sort of a
little dramatic,
but
Matthew.
Yeah, one of the things I actually spend the most time on with our podcast is thinking of titles for our episodes. It is like, I probably spend as much time thinking of a title for the episode as we do recording the episodes. It's kind of crazy.
They have a support group for that.
You'd be the champion.
Yeah.
All right, so we have. I want to make sure that we cover all the high points before we run out of time with you. So we have them on the show. You know, they're on the show. They have their message. They're telling stories. Call to action on there. I know you mentioned there's like 10 or more. There's probably like countless CTAs on the show that you can give. I might be jumping ahead because like I'm kind of curious. Like, what are some of the mistakes that people like when they're on the show recording? Like, what are these? They're just like, stay away, don't do that. Just keep it top of mind. And it's like you navigate
meaning
around
on the actions on the invitation or just in general.
Actually, prior, in general.
Okay. So there's a few, and I started really paying attention to what people are telling me they're getting clients from the episodes, and what people are like, I'm getting nothing. And so if they were a guest on my show, I could tell right away, like, that this isn't going to work. Or if I have clients who are guesting on other shows, I'd listened to one of the episodes and I'm like, okay, I think I know what's going on. And I actually found 17 common ones. I'm happy to share that as a resource later if you guys want me to.
Please,
but the 3 most common ones is not having a good topic. Okay, we've already covered that. Yep. Not having a golden thread, meaning you're not building clear talking points and stories that demonstrate what it is that you're delivering. And stories could be your own personal story. It could be an experience that a client had. It could be, but try to be specific. Again, that specificity and not just general. The third one, and there's so many I could cover, but we talked about this a little bit, so I want to come back to it. The third one is what happens once the episode airs. And I think, and it's funny, I was doing a talk for someone's mastermind, Suzanne Evans, who I think you guys know. And there was a guy in there, a big marketer, who had been on my show. And when I taught this, he went, oh, light bulb moment. I just realized like I'm blowing it. And that is, once the episode airs, don't let the host do all the marketing. You do the marketing too. And I have 5 things that I teach my clients to do here, because what I have discovered along the way is that, I might get some great people from their following, but I've got dormant social media followers who are lurking around doing nothing. So guess what wakes them up when they see me on a highly credible podcast? Authority boost moment, right? Like there's credibility in that. I'm borrowing the credibility of my host. And then second, they'll be like, oh, that's exactly what I'm struggling with right now. I'm going to listen to that episode. And guess what just happened? I've now reignited their desire to learn from me. Yeah. So I'm going to move them from social media to my list and reignite that. There's no Facebook ad. There's no retargeting, right? There's no costly affiliate splits to get that person back into my list. I just leveraged that 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour that I used, got on that episode, and turned them back into an intrigued and invested action taker.
So like, would you be, so it's all social media, like sharing a story, sharing a post, sharing your insights.
You want me to share you my 5 tips real fast?
If you can, that'd be amazing.
All right,
thank you.
Let's go. I'm giving you guys all my best gold here, but it's good. It's really,
they'll come back to you, I promise.
It will always. I know, I'm happy to share it because look, it's really simple stuff. First of all, yes, put it into a social media rotation. And if you are not on Twitter, some of this, what I would do is not do it every day. Like I would maybe every 6 weeks, drop it on a Facebook page or put it into your LinkedIn. You can get really creative and create blog posts of the favorite podcasts you've been on. I do that. Guess what?
Smart.
Great search engine optimization. But on Twitter, what's really great is, it's like the timeline is moving so fast all the time. You can put something on every couple weeks and, so I have all of my podcasts, especially the higher profile ones that are really targeted. They drop every 2 to 3 weeks over and over and over again in a recur post. So that's great for search engine optimization. I've actually gotten media pitches by doing that.
Wow.
I
No.
can see it. Yeah.
Big media pitches on Twitter, because I actually have a decent following on Twitter,
Sure.
so we can connect there if you guys want.
We love
But
Twitter.
you
Everybody
see what I
listening.
do.
Everybody listening needs to
Twitter
get
is
on Twitter.
awesome.
Yeah.
Stuff.
It's my favorite
And
social media.
yesterday, because of this, I just got booked on the single greatest Twitter chat that is currently happening, Winnie Sun's Twitter chat, and the follow-up, which goes to like 17 different big name. It's like a news segment that she brings in and highlights her Twitter chat people. I'm like,
That's amazing.
okay, cool. Like,
So
thank
it's
you.
like hashtag. We're not going to open up that
Yeah,
rabbit hole
that's
now.
a whole nother episode. We can do another
Sure.
day. But yes, it's very healthy to do that. Second tip: do an email broadcast, or at least put it in your newsletter. Show, again, you're warming up your audience and saying, hey, look, like this influencer picked me and spotlighted this topic. Like, it's good. And then put it on your media page.
Yep.
Okay. So put it on a place where people can see, if they go to your media page or your booking page, that you've been highlighted on these big name shows. Guess what? Hustle and Flowchart's going to go up there as soon as this airs. Right. And you start to have a place where people see, oh yeah, this person knows what they're talking about. So those are some of the big ones I suggest doing. Just get creative and like, remember that it's not what the host is doing for you. It's also what you're able to demonstrate to your followers and to your community. Oh, I remember the other one. And this is not my original idea. I learned this from my assistant, and then I heard someone else talking about it. You can put it in a follow-up sequence when somebody is going to book a consult with you, and you've got a couple really good episodes that you think would demonstrate and reinforce your expertise before you meet. Say, hey, by the way, you might not know this, I was featured on this episode. It's a great showcase of what we're going to talk about. So grab 10 minutes or half an hour and listen to it before we meet. It'll help you be ready for our conversation.
That's clever. I like that. Yeah. There's so many cool things we've chatted about, like on guesting. It's a lot of what you could take from as a podcast. You can repurpose all that content that you just did on that show. The cool thing is usually podcast hosts have assets and all these graphics that they make for you that they put their time and effort into.
Yeah.
So you might as well leverage that as much as possible and sprinkle it in your own content. It's just a win-win all around. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of times if we're on a really, really good podcast episode and we loved the conversation, we might even put it into our podcast feed for other people to hear.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a popular way to do it. Yeah. JJ Flazanes does that a lot too.
JJ is like a beast at that. Like 50 shows. I always make fun of her.
Yeah.
I know. They just launched a new podcast too.
I don't know how they do it. So I want to circle back around real quick to the calls to action on a show, because I know, like, when we go on a lot of podcasts, we go on probably between the two of us, we're going on 8 to 10 a month combined. So when we go on podcasts, we do put out tracking links and things like that, but we don't always get traffic from all the podcasts we're on. And, some of it could just be the volume of listeners they have, but some of it could be our call to action and how we actually tried to drive them away from that podcast. So do you have any like best practices that you can share as far as like, how do I get somebody from a listener of this podcast over to what I'm doing?
Well, I think it's a couple steps involved here, and it's not like one size fits all. This is where you really need to understand your desired outcomes. And how do we I say start with the end. So when I'm building out a magnetic message for somebody, I always say, where do you ultimately want them to go? What is the program you're trying to fill? And what is a first step we can give somebody from a podcast that is making that a no-brainer to start moving through your client journey? But then it goes all the way back to the topic. So if you're not picking the right topic, chances are you're not going to get them to take action. So I like to look at, there's a couple, I think, tried and true ones. Some kind of easy one-sheet download that's really catchy for the topic that the person is talking about, that solves the problem that you've created during the conversation. So now we know we want to get booked on podcasts, but it's still not working for me. What do I do? Well, you got to go evaluate and make sure you're not making 17 of these mistakes. Otherwise, it's all for naught. I had a client who, she was a really good accountant, really, really good accountant. She had a great business, and she had started getting on podcasts, and then was like, oh my gosh, like I have opposite problem. Like I'm getting all the wrong people who are requesting a consult. So what we did was we remapped the niche, which podcast was she getting on? Do they attract the right people? And B, stop making her so accessible. Put an application or put a little checklist first so that people can go through the checklist and say, yes, this is me and I want this, then book the consult. So what was happening is she was sending them right to a consult. Her assistant was sitting there like booking.
Got
and
a full calendar now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, and no one's buying. This is not a good return. And she's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I go, not yet. Let's fix the problem. Then you can assess whether or not it's going to work. And it did, like just making one little tweak. She started getting better targeted prospects. And then she was enrolling 1 out of 4 instead of 1 out of 20.
Wow. Yeah. No, it's all relevance. And yeah, I like the fact or the way of have a couple barriers in there and use those as filters. And you're still giving value in that. But yeah, anybody who kind of raises their hands after that cheat sheet or whatever it might be, it's pretty likely to convert into someone. Even if it's a digital product or something.
And this is a common thing, I think, in marketing. It's like, we're testing stuff all the time and it's not always going to work. And there are some great podcasts that may not really be attracting your perfect people. And what I've always said is like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, before you give up on that call to action, try a few more podcasts, tweak the way you explain it. Because one of the common problems is how you explain what your thing is. Because if you just say, oh yeah, here, go to this link, why am I going there? But if you really build it up and say, so look, we've been talking about this. I want to give you a solution. It's the first place I would encourage you to explore working with me anyway. And it's full of jam-packed value. You're going to get A, B, and C. And here's where it's at. It's my gift to you today. They're 10 times more likely to do it than, I have this thing, go look at it over here. It's all in the delivery, right?
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, because it's very easy to just kind of rush the call to action and like, I got this free thing over here. It's on my website. That's a pretty common one. And it's like, but that's not exclusive to the show anymore. It doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy inside. It's not a gift as much.
Yeah.
Well, then I also have to work. And guess what? Remember, we're listening on our devices, right? Yeah. We're out on a walk. Like one of the things I'm going to start testing, and I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to start testing text to the gift on podcasts. Because am I going to remember to go do this when I get done with my walk or I'm not driving anymore? But can I do a text message, even verbally, and go, hey, I don't want to forget this. Let me text this right now.
Yeah. True. That's a good one. We never tested that on guesting.
Not on guesting.
We've used it on our podcast, to get our little action guides, but you're right.
Let me know if you try it.
Yeah, we should.
Definitely.
Good idea.
Well, I have one sort of last, I think, quicker question before we wrap up. Is there any sort of distinction or anything that you do differently between going on podcasts versus going on virtual summits? Is there any sort of differences that are important to touch on?
Yeah, it kind of depends on if it's video or audio. I think when I'm in a virtual summit, I typically there's a beginning and an end to the access versus a podcast. And this is one of the reasons why I'm such a fan of podcasts is it's 24/7 evergreen access. So I'm always going to think about, is my offer evergreen? Is it something they're always going to get, or is it time sensitive? So again, another mistake that I made along the way, I was getting on podcasts and I was sharing these time sensitive things. And then of course, when it's gone, so's the lead. So I actually went on Bob Berg's Go Giver podcast a few years ago and I did a time sensitive one. And I was like, what was I thinking?
The Go Giver.
So, so I learned that you've got to really make sure that virtual summits, great. It can be time sensitive. You want to have some sense of urgency. You want to have a little bit more specificity to the offer in getting that person to take action while they're participating in the summit. Because once it's over, it's over. They're not going to keep listening. But the podcast, it's always there. Yeah. So, you got to think about that in what you're inviting people to do.
case in point, still getting leads from 7 years ago on JLD's podcast. So
yeah,
make it
here's the
evergreen.
crazy thing too. Whatever I offered them, it doesn't even exist anymore. I don't even know what I told them. I had to go listen to it and figure it out. But they're still finding me, so that's
as long as you can capture
thing.
the lead and give start a conversation.
Right.
Well, Melanie, this is amazing. Yeah, and I'm happy that you were able to do like a condensed version of a masterclass or a workshop, basically. Tell us about your gift, because I know you have one. What was that pretty link anyway? Where is that going to lead people to?
Yeah, so what I did, because this has been such a big conversation and so many people are curious about how to make the podcast guesting better, I started to study what are the mistakes and how do you fix them. And it's at 17 common mistakes that people make when podcast guesting and virtual, being a guest expert, that are costing you the lead and the sale. And you can get that at your custom pretty link, melaniebenson.com/hustle. And what it is it's a very simple download that goes through what these common mistakes are, how to recognize if you're making this mistake and what to do differently. And then it leads you to a really very fast mini training on how do you really magnetize your message so you are enrolling more of your ideal clients. And then if somebody was like, Melanie, how do I work with you? It'll tell you what that looks like at that step. But that's it's one of my people are emailing me all the time, like, Melanie, this has been so helpful. I didn't even know I was making this mistake, and now I know how to fix it. So it's got really practical, easy to implement advice for you.
I'm sure there's stuff we can learn from that too. that we're committing and just not knowing.
No, I'm done learning. I figured it all out.
Did you?
Yeah.
Teach me the ways, man. All right. So melaniebenson.com/hustle, and we'll link that in the show notes as well.
Thank you.
Any final?
No, is there
thoughts?
anywhere else you want people to follow you? Social media, anything like that? Go follow. What's your Twitter actually? Because
my Twitter is Mel Coach. I'm also a huge fan of Instagram. We do a lot of sharing of the podcast there. Coach Melanie Benson.
Okay.
I'm on all the big platforms. I'm not really a big Pinterest person. That's the one I don't do. But I'm on LinkedIn.
Big Pinterest people typically.
Apparently, there's a whole thing you can do to boost followers for your podcast with Pinterest. But I'm like,
yeah.
Kim
Sutton. One too many things. Yeah, Kim.
She's got a course about how to grow a podcast through Pinterest, which we should probably go through at some point.
That's a good point.
I just don't know if we have time to add extra social media accounts into the mix right now. But
just outsource it if you're going to do it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you, Melanie. And also shout out to your podcast too, actually. Amplify Your Success. I know you quickly mentioned it before, but go check it out. That's another place that they could go explore deeper.
You might find Matt and Joe on it in the very near future.
Yes, hopefully.
All right, Melanie. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Hey.
So that was fun.
It was fun because it's extremely relevant to people that listen to our show.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about guesting, but it's also great for the guests that come on our show. We should give them that training so they get the most out of their appearances on our podcast.
We literally should do that, where when somebody books into our show, say, go listen to this episode before coming on.
Like, it's nothing against you. It's going to help you.
Yeah.
Promise.
Or we should just put it on the page. So, on our contact page right now, there's like a little disclaimer below the contact form that says like, hey, if you're reaching out to be on our podcast, just be aware we almost never accept cold outreach. So your email will probably get deleted. And it says something like that on our contact page. I should put that link right below it and be like, if you really, really want to get on this podcast, listen to this episode.
Listen and follow Melanie's advice.
I think I'll do that because it'll probably get us some extra traction to this episode.
Well, I think it's going to and it's also going to save us a lot of time and or support time, just time across the board for all these pitches that we get. We get a lot of pitches. We're grateful, just like Melanie is.
This is going to be very meta when the person who is going to book into our podcast gets to this point of the podcast right now.
I hope they listen this long because it's only going to save them some time in the long run. Maybe not today.
What we should do is give them a code word right now. And if they say the code word in their pitch, then we know they listened to the whole episode.
Banana.
Yeah. So you got to incorporate banana into your pitch somehow, and we'll know you listened to this episode.
and brownie points go to someone who has a video and incorporate banana in there somehow. That's weirder the better.
Yeah, we like weird stuff. But Joe's into some freaky.
No. Not
You
your,
don't
not your
want to
level
know
of
what
freak,
Joe does
dude.
with bananas.
You got a whole level I can't even fathom. But you're right. No, I think this is great because Melanie, like one of the things I think we could probably do, in which you're alluding to at this video, is showing how to book on our show. And like, I mean, we've said it many times. We're very thankful for the audio or the network that we have, where we get a lot of input, just people that we already know we want. But yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to give someone a process, the cold pitchers out there.
Yeah.
Because we get multiple a day now, and it's thankful, but at the same time, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Most of these don't even take a second.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be not that we're necessarily looking for a ton of guests, but if you are going to cold pitch us, like we want you to do it in a way that's going to get you the best potential result. I mean, most of our guests, so I'm going to be totally transparent, 98.73% of our guests.
That's accurate.
I've done the math. 98.73% of the guests have come through either people we've already known or our network introing us to them.
Mm-hmm.
Almost none of our guests ever. I can probably think of like 2 guests that have ever come on the show that got on the show as a result of cold outreach. And you have to assume that those people had pretty exceptional pitches.
Sure.
So I'm just going to disclaim that. But after listening to that episode, you do have a better likelihood of getting on our show if you follow some of the stuff that she was saying.
What is 320 divided by 2?
320 divided by 2?
It's like, how many episodes
160.
Yeah. So what's the I'm just trying to check your math actually on the fly. But
it's
probably won't. Yeah. No, I mean like about the percentages of getting on. Too much right now. We're not going to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's so true. And Melanie, I mean, I liked her whole take on guest experting, like that term and that phrase, because I think that kind of wraps this whole conversation we had up with her like really well. Speaking is kind of off the table for most parts of the world right now, probably for a while. But like podcasting, like she said, she absolutely loves. And she's not speaking. I think she stopped speaking a long, long time ago. And like that was kind of her thing. And there's a reason for it. That's how it sounds like she got her business. We didn't really actually go into that part, but really got her business off the ground, got her honed in on what she's talking about and connected with the right people. That's what podcasting can do.
Yeah.
And you don't need to go anywhere. You hang out in your freaking whatever you woke up in.
Yeah.
So, most of the time it's not even audio. So
you mean video?
Or video. Yes. If it's not audio, it's weird.
Yeah. You're just making a video podcast, but it's silent.
That works. But yeah, no, it's like the power of podcasting, but not only that, doing it right with the plan.
Yeah.
Melanie lined out is perfect.
Yeah. I mean, so here's a couple of my big takeaways from this show. They may be the same as yours. You may have different ones.
Probably not.
But one of my big takeaways is when going on podcasts to try to think of some sort of formula that you can teach. When I asked her, like, okay, what if I have a boring topic? Like, what if I am someone who has like an e-commerce store that sells clothing or something like that, right? There's so many different businesses like that. How am I going to differentiate myself? Well, here's the whole concept of create some sort of formula or an acronym or something like that makes you memorable inside of that topic. I think was a sort of really powerful concept.
That was a good one. Yeah. And because you stand out and you get more specific on something.
I wish more guests on our show would do that.
For sure. No, and that goes into that whole like one sheet prep doc thing that you could send, and it has all that. Because yeah, when Melanie sent her prep doc, and it's no joke, it was almost 2 pages or something like that. She had like 4 different methods or frameworks or acronyms that she had. She lined out one, the ROCS, ROCS method. She also had the golden thread. I mean, there were like all these things that you're like, wait, hold, and we literally highlighted them. The showstopper, we didn't even get to that one. It's like these are things that she kind of titled for herself. They're memorable.
Yep.
They're catchphrases, and that's actually one of the prep things that she gave us. Didn't even see that until now.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's a good takeaway, and that's one that where I think we've done pretty well, but we're always thinking like, how to name things for our own ecosystem. But I feel like going on podcasts is probably a good thing that we can even refine better. It's like having a specific name or acronym. The CAP method for a while. CAP.
Yeah. And then perpetual audience growth, PAG.
Yeah. We always
APEs are affiliate promotion engine.
That's right. So those things, they work. They're memorable. Something that showed up in like kind of stood out to me was her whole thing of picking shows, and I like the fact where she'll actually go after competitors or ones that are kind of playing in a similar space, so she knows they have a similar audience, and then essentially focusing on a problem they don't do, or complimenting. I thought that was interesting. Is you can actually have your competitors out there promote you, because and she kind of said this a little bit more in our pre-interview, so I'll say it now, is that she actually will approach ones that would never probably promote your stuff.
Yeah.
If you have a competitor or similar product, well, they need content. And if you're an expert that you're solving a problem that they don't, or you have an acronym that sounds cool to their audience that they just want to know about, like, and you're specific and compliments, they're probably they will promote you because it's their episode. Yeah. So like now this is a great way to get some marketing promotions from someone that would never promote you otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was a great takeaway. I feel like with what we do, we don't really have a lot of competition. We just have like sort of similar businesses, right? Like I guess our competition would be the people that are promoting the same products or similar products that compete against the products that we promote.
Sure.
So as affiliates, we do have competition in the sense that there's other people promoting the same product, and there's also other people and other products that compete with the products that we're promoting. But that's not really our message, right?
Yeah. But it's great for like an e-com or I don't know, Matt, but any specific offer, let's say, that you might have, or consultant. If you're a consultant going on a consultant's podcast, like a business coach or whatever, like, not a lot of, if there's like overlap of like, hey, we share the similar audience, well, go there with like solving a different problem in a different way, and they'll still promote you to their audience that might not be buying their stuff. They can buy your stuff.
Yeah.
instead.
Well, I also like what she talked about getting on the radar of some of the podcasters when she was talking about go listen to their episodes, find ones you like, and share them on social media, retweet them, like, help. So many guests come to us, and we're speaking from personal experience with our show. So many guests come to us with just like a pitch, but the pitch is all like what's in it for them and not what's in it for us. And not that we're always looking out for us, but if you're sending us a generic pitch and we don't know who you are and there's no personalization to it, we're probably going to ignore you. However, Joe and I, we've mentioned we're both on Twitter. I'm at Matt R. Wolf. Joe's at Joe Fier. But we're both on Twitter. If we started to see somebody like tweeting our episodes going, oh, this episode was fantastic, here's what I loved about it. Here's another episode, here's what I loved about it. And we started seeing people actually sharing our content. Well, you're going to get on our radar because you're sharing our content. You're helping, grow our brand with us. And because you're on our radar, you're much more likely to get a conversation with us.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, that's the name of the game.
Yeah.
You got to do that.
But so many people don't think ahead and go, I'm going to do something for these guys before I ever make the ask. I'm going to do something for Melanie before I ever make this ask.
They do more of a numbers game. It's like more of a like
spray and pray.
Kind of, yeah. It's just a numbers game, man. And that's where those mail shake campaigns or GMAS campaigns, those automated follow-up or mass broadcasts, but they look personalized. Great tools, don't get me wrong, but use them in the right way, folks. Come on. But yeah, like if you really want to get on a show, like get personal.
Yeah.
Get super personal and try some video too. Like telling you, like the Loom videos, they work. All the stuff Melanie said, layer whatever you feel comfortable in, but just be different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Cool. Well, I think that's good. Those are great takeaways.
Yeah.
So, let's give a quick shout out back to Melanie one more time on her the 17 mistakes and all that stuff for guesting. It's at melaniebenson.com/hustle. So go get that. That's free. And of course, you can get the notes for this episode. You can get those at hustleandflowchart.com/comp.
Or if you go to flowchartgroup.com and you join the Facebook group, you can actually get them through the Facebook group now.
That's probably better even, huh?
Yeah, everybody who joins the Facebook group now, we're going to send you an automated email saying, hey, here's the latest notes for the latest episodes. Yeah. So go to flowchartgroup.com, join the group, and in the process of joining the group, that's how you can get the notes.
Yeah, go do that. And it's good people in the group, Go introduce yourself once you join. And just last shout out to our sponsor as well.
Easy Webinar.
Easy Webinar. Our friends over at Easy Webinar. Everything webinars, they got you covered.
Yep.
So they're the software that basically has any type of webinar that you need.
Yep.
You can get it all done in one place easily.
Automated, live, hybrid, and everything in between. If there is
alien
anything
webinars too.
Alien, yep.
probably those ones that we just can't think of that are just so like out of our minds. Yeah, they got it covered. So
And they're not called hard webinar. They're called easy webinar. So
That's right.
it's
That's right.
easy to
For a
set them
reason.
up too. So easywebinar.com/hustle. Casey and the guys over there set up a sweet discount for Hustle and Flowchart listeners. So if you go over to easywebinar.com/hustle, you'll get hooked up.
get it. All right. Till next time, go share this with your friends. Go. You know what? Think about who's doing podcasting right now. Who's guesting? Who's just maybe thinking about guesting? Go share this episode with them.
Do it.
You'll love them. You'll love them. You'll love it.
They'll love you.
They'll love you. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks everybody for listening to this episode of the Hustle and Flowchart podcast. For taking the time to listen, we want to give you something a little bit special. Every single episode that we do, we actually have somebody on our team take notes. We basically have a Cliff's Notes version of every episode where you can go and find all of the tips and tactics that they laid out, all of the resources that they laid out, all the good stuff from this episode. We actually have a nice simple notes version that you can find on our website. So go to evergreenprofits.com, find this episode that you just listened to, and give us your email address and we'll send you the notes. Thanks for listening.
Go get it.
Wiki wiki.